Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for this policy roundtable of the Boulder Chamber on the City of Boulder and Xcel Energy's franchise agreement. For those of you that are on right now, we may wait just one more minute for people to join, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for being here. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. I am Andrea Meneghel. I am the Director of Public Affairs at the Boulder Chamber, and we thank you for being here today for this policy roundtable to look at the issues going to this year's ballot on the City of Boulder and Xcel Energy's franchise agreement, as well as the utility occupation tax. Today, you'll hear presentations from city staff. City Attorney Tom Carr will go over what has been put into the agreement and what we can expect to see on the ballot. Then we have the president of Xcel Colorado, Alex Jackson, here to speak from the company's perspective on that. And then we'll get thoughts from members of our community, such as Mayor Sam Weaver will give his perspective on what is going forward. And we'll hear those perspectives also from Councilmember Bob Yates, who has been vocal on one side of the issue in looking at the franchise agreement, and from folks on the other side of the issue from the Empower Our Future Sierra Club Coalition, Leslie Glustrom and Steve Whitaker. With that being said, Tyler, could you please go to the next slide? I just want to make sure to thank our sponsors that make events this happen for us throughout the year. Those are companies such as Google, the WW Reynolds Company, the Zayo Group, and Boulder Transportation Connections. Thank you for all your support. Tyler, go ahead and next slide. And one thing I want to say is that after we hear from the speakers, we want you to answer questions. The purpose of this event is to inform our members of the Boulder Chamber, Boulder businesses, as to how this works, what to expect on the ballot, and to educate you before you vote. There is a long way to go before we get to that election day, and there's going to be a lot that's going to be communicated in this community, but we wanted to start the conversation today. We've already received some questions. Go to the last slide, please. We already received some questions from our members ahead of time. We'll be asking those, but in the meantime, please submit any questions you may have through the question and answer function on the Zoom, and me and my colleague Lori Cole will be looking for those questions, and then we'll pose those to our panelists so that you can get the information you need. One thing that I would like to also add is that this forum is expected to provide balanced view and perspective on the issues. It's not a forum to attack or criticize any views that you may not agree with. Our goal is to make sure that all views have the ability to be communicated and make Boulder a better community for the spirit of being able to have a conversation such as this, where there are strong perspectives on both sides. So please ask the questions to get information, but please refrain from being critical or carrying that kind of conversation out on the chat. We would rather not have that. So with that being said, before we go any further, I also want to allow our president and CEO, John Taylor, to make an opening statement. So I hand it off to John.
Awesome, thanks, Andre. And your comments are a nice platform for the few things that I just want to offer at the outset. So first of all, we all know that this has been a long process of exploration of the right path for our community with respect to our energy future. And our energy future is defined by goals that include for our community green energy, reliable service at a cost that is responsible and something that we can afford as a community. You have been clear, or we have been clear from the outset, that we have been relative skeptical, we say skeptical neutrals in this conversation. We have thought that it probably was a better approach to pursue our goals in the energy future through some sort of partnership with our existing franchise provider, Xcel Energy. That being said, we participated and have engaged in the discussion in what we hope has always been a constructive fashion. And so the second thing I'll say is that throughout this process, we have had great respect for the representatives and leadership on all sides of the process. And many of those folks you will see here today. They are all good intended individuals who have the goal of achieving the best pathway for our community. And so I can speak on behalf of the Boulder Chamber and say it's with great respect that we have explored this together and appreciated the dialogue throughout the discussion. But we are here where we are today, and I just want to start by thanking the individuals who pursued this negotiation path, including a new face for the Xcel Energy, new leadership at Xcel Energy, Alice Jackson, who we'll hear from today. And this is our opportunity as a community, but as a business community that the Boulder Chamber represents, to hear from both sides as to what is the nature of the settlement agreement and does it present the best path forward for our businesses, for our economy, and for our community. So I look forward to the discussion and appreciate and have great respect for the folks who are going to hear from today. And I know that all of you who are here with us in the audience will appreciate the dialogue too. So with that, I hand it back to you, Andrea.
Thank you, John. We're going to dive right in. The first person up to present will be Boulder City Attorney Tom Carr. Tom is going to do a presentation for about 15 minutes to just take us through the history of this issue, the finer points of the agreement that has been developed, and what we can expect to see on the ballot. If you have any questions, please again submit those in the Q&A function, and otherwise I turn it over to Tom. My colleague Tyler X is operating the logistics. Tyler, could you please give Tom the screen sharing?
He has done so. You should be seeing my presentation. So one thing I should note is that I am a city employee. I'm being paid today. I cannot take any political views. So I'm going to do my best to present this without favoring one side or the other and just present the facts. If I am reluctant to answer any questions, that's why. I have to restrict my remarks. There are other people who can say things about pro and con. I cannot. So let me just dive right into the settlement. This is an outline of what the settlement is. The plan is for an 80% reduction in greenhouse gases by Xcel by 2030. The settlement agreement provides for what we'll call check-ins, and I'll give you more detail of those in a minute, in 2022, 2024, and 2027. The city actually has, in the normal franchise, a franchisee under state law has an option to terminate the franchise twice at the 10 and 15-year anniversary. In this proposed franchise, the city will have an option to terminate it 6 times over the 20-year life of the franchise, 3 times for in 2022, 2024, and 2027 based on metrics, and 3 times for any reason at all at the 5, 10, and 15-year anniversary. There's an energy partnership agreement as part of the settlement. The idea is that the city and Xcel will work together to develop ways to help the city reduce its own greenhouse gas emissions and try to meet the city's goal of 100% renewable energy by 2030. Also, and to try some things which are not currently possible under state law, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. The enforcement mechanism is the possibility of municipalization in the future. With the option to depart 6 times over 20 years, the agreement provides for mechanisms for the city to restart its municipalization process. Under a normal franchise agreement, the franchisee is entitled to approximately 1% of revenues dedicated to undergrounding during each year of the franchise. The city obviously has been out of franchise since 2010. The city's 1% of the city's gross revenues is approximately $1 million a year. So there's a provision to allow the city to catch up on undergrounding, to allow for undergrounding of about approximately $33 million in projects over the approximately half of that would be in the first 5 years of the franchise. As a condition of the city of Xcel agreeing to this, the city will have to enter into a franchise. Under the city's charter, a franchise must be approved by the voters. The council last night passed a ordinance placing on the ballot a question of whether or not to approve the franchise. The city will also agree to suspend its municipalization effort. As part of the settlement agreement that the council also approved last night, once it's signed, the city will notify the 3 fora in which the city is currently litigating that there is a potential settlement that is conditioned on voter approval. And if there is voter approval, those 3 cases will be dismissed. So, as I said, there are what we call check-ins, and this is part of the settlement. As you can see on this chart, these are the targets that Xcel has agreed to meet in the franchise. So this language is actually in the franchise. And if Xcel fails to meet those, the city has the possibility of departing the franchise in 2022, 2024, and 2027. As you can see, right now, Xcel is at 42% reduction over their 2005 levels from 2019. By 2022, they will have to be at 52%. By 2024, at 61%. At 2027, at 67%. And their goal of 2030, 80% reduction in greenhouse gases. You will note that we use the phrase greenhouse gases, and at the bottom of the chart, it refers to CO2e, which is CO2e is CO2 equivalence. It's a measure of total greenhouse gases that going beyond carbon dioxide. So there's a question about how this will be tracked. Xcel participates in something called the Climate Registry, which verifies their greenhouse gas emissions on an annual basis. The city will receive those reports. In addition, Xcel is subject to mandatory greenhouse gas reporting under federal regulations. Xcel does annual corporate responsibility reports, and they report to the Carbon Disclosure Project, and there's a group near One Future. The thought is that there are various ways for the city to verify that Xcel has met these projected targets. So as I said, the city will have the ability to depart the franchise on 6 occasions. The top line is 2026, 2031, 2036. Those are the years after the 5, 10, and 15-year anniversary of the franchise. Those departures are without any restrictions. As I said earlier, Bill may also exit in 2023, 2025, and 2028 if Xcel Energy fails to meet the GHG reduction goals that are set forth in the franchise. So there are 3 ways the city will be able to exercise the opt-out, either by a 2/3 vote of the city council, by council placing a measure on the ballot, or the community placing a measure on the ballot. The Energy Partnership Agreement provides a framework for working at the distribution level for planning local projects and initiatives. It identifies some specific projects with the intention of addressing the gap between Xcel's 80% reduction in greenhouse gases and the city's goals of a 100% renewable. It should be clear that those are different measures. That obviously the 100% renewables is a different measure than greenhouse gas reductions. So the city's goal, though, is 100% renewable electric energy by 2030, and it's going to take some work to get there. It's got the governance of the partnership. The executive team will be the president of Xcel Colorado, right now, Alex Jackson, the city manager of the Boulder, excuse me, and executive leadership from the city. There'll be an oversight team from city and Boulder employees and an advisory panel made up of community, businesses, and the University of Colorado to help guide these partnership agreements. So there are not only goals, there are also metrics to measure whether or not the proposed projects are working. So these are some of the metrics that we have talked about. I want to note financial impact on Boulder residents and businesses. The projects will also go through the city's racial equity filter to make sure that we are looking to make sure that we are not disadvantaging people of color or other disadvantaged people. So some of the core criteria: projects that would not otherwise happen in the absence of the partnership, be available that are part of Boulder that without excluding particular members. As I said, align with Boulder's commitment to racial equity, be designed to have the broadest impact of the most residents of the business possible, and include targets and metrics otherwise agreed to by the parties. Another provision of the partnership agreement is data sharing. One of the challenges that you have in doing any kind of this work is understanding what impact you're having. So we have gone back and forth over the years with Xcel on what the data actually says. As a private company, they have no responsibility or limited responsibility to provide data to the community. The agreement provides for all of this data, including reliability data, which is key, but also use data. So if you're trying to reduce the amount of electricity used in your community, being able to measure it on the feeder level will be very helpful to that. So this is the list of data that they will be required to provide us under the partnership agreement. Another provision of the partnership agreement is a recognition that state law provides some restrictions on what we can and can't do. One of those restrictions is a limitation on installing solar panels on your home or business. You cannot install more than panels that produce more than 120% of your prior year's electric usage. So that the parties have agreed to go to the legislature and seek to have that rule either expanded or eliminated completely, which will benefit customers in Boulder. Also, we're going to ask the PUC to develop a tariff to effectuate the rapid conversion of bus fleets to electric buses. We're going to seek legislation to allow for the removal of barriers to large amounts of local distributed generation and facilitation of microgrids. And we've talked about doing microgrids at Chautauqua and at the Alpine Balsam projects, which are interesting concepts there. One of the challenges that you have in distributed energy is that under state law, only Xcel can provide energy. So if you have say a storage facility that has a large surface area but low usage, and you're next to a car wash that has a small surface area and high usage, you cannot provide electricity from the storage facility to the car wash. Xcel has agreed to go to the legislature and help see if we can change that rule to allow for more distributed generation. This is a list of some of the potential projects. The microgrids I mentioned, Chautauqua, one of the projects that's been up there forever is to underground the lines and to make Chautauqua a historic site with 100% renewable energy. With the Alpine Balsam project, we have a 9-acre site that we're currently in the process of developing, and the idea is to try to create a microgrid there that will provide for more efficient use of energy and more renewable energy. Hydrogen storage projects, cost sharing, figuring out how to do this with various state and local resources, residential demand response battery, and a street lighting pilot. So the local power initiatives, we did submit an RFP that's out there. It's come in. We had 10 individual bidders, 2 full requirements offers, 5 partial requirement offers, 1 offer of local battery storage system, and 2 non-power. The utility scale bids were similar to what we got in 2018. Both full requirements projects offered to achieve 100% renewable by 2030. 1 included up to 55 megawatts of local distribution. Some of the projects may still go on, may be still appropriate for a city Xcel partnership. We're currently exploring and doing our due diligence with the bidders. So where we are on the current project. From a legal standpoint, we have 3 bits of litigation going on. One is a proceeding in the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission under Section 210 of the Federal Power Act to compel Xcel to provide service through the substations to the city utility. The other 2 are a condemnation proceeding and an appeal of a dismissal of a prior condemnation proceeding. The appeal is pending in the Court of Appeals. The condemnation proceeding is stayed pending resolution of the decision in the Court of Appeals. The FERC, we're still waiting for a FERC decision. As soon as the settlement agreement is signed, we will inform all three courts that there's a potential settlement, and that the court should ask the court to take no further action until after the election, and we know whether or not the voters have approved the settlement agreement, the franchise. From an engineering standpoint, we have substation designs, we estimate that those will be completed in October, where the engineering design is ongoing from Boulder's perspective. The Xcel distribution engineering designs are complete, and the Boulder system is 90% complete. So from an engineering standpoint, most of the work is done for at least how we separate and creating separating the substations. So if the voters approve this, we will stop the municipalization effort. To restart, obviously, is going to put the city at a position not the same that the city's in now. The agreement provides for some provisions that makes restarting municipalization possible. Xcel agreed to a cap of $200 million on any awarding condemnation, including acquisition costs, real property interests, any going concern damages to the remainder, and the price to purchase 2 of the substations that Xcel owns that the city would be purchasing. The cap does not include stranded costs, that is the costs associated with generation assets that were created to serve the Boulder load. There is an agreement on substation issues. The commission, when they issued their orders on transfer of assets, the commission said that the city and Xcel should work out the substation issues. We have been negotiating since 2019 on those issues. As a part of these negotiations, there is a resolution to all of the substation issues. Xcel agreed to pay the cost of any updates to the existing substation interconnection studies and design drawings that are caused by changes to the substations. The 2 orders that the PUC issued, the parties have agreed will remain in effect, and the city will be able to use the list of assets in the October 28, 2019 decision as may be modified by any changes that happen between now and when the city starts municipalization. So what happens if the voters approve the franchise? The cost agreement, that is that we have an agreement with Xcel to pay all their costs associated with all the engineering work, will be held at abeyance. Xcel will complete the in-process design work and stop future work. Xcel will release 2 letters of credit that they hold, one for 1.7 million and one for 2.6 million. The city will dismiss the current FERC proceeding, the condemnation case and the appeal. And as I said, we will shortly advise the courts of the pending settlement. So moving on to the tax issue, there is a utility occupation tax. So in 2010, the city, well, let me back up a little bit. As part of a franchise, a franchisee pays for the privilege of using the city's rights of ways and streets, a franchise fee. For Boulder, that's generally about $4 million. That money goes to the general fund to support general city government. In 2010, when the city decided to not renew the franchise with Xcel, the city imposed upon Xcel a utility occupation tax of approximately $4 million a year that Xcel passes on to its customers, but which Xcel pays for the privilege of using the city streets. So that tax has been effective since 2010. In 2011, the voters approved an additional utility occupation tax to support municipalization. That tax was renewed again in 2017. Both of those taxes expire in December 2022. Both have provisions that make it that they will both go away if the franchise is approved by the voters. So in 2021 and 2022, the portion that supports the municipalization effort would have collected $2.1 million. It will if it continues on. So as part of the provisions that council approved last night, council approved repurposing and extending the municipalization portion of the utility occupation tax for the purpose of, one, repaying the general fund for the debt owed to it by the municipalization project. The taxes have not covered all of the costs, so some of those costs are still being borne by the city general fund. So the council proposes repurposing the utility occupation tax to allow repayment of those costs. Two, to help with utility bills for people who are disadvantaged in the community to help prevent them from losing their homes. And three, to support the partnership agreement with Xcel going forward. There's a slide that says all the things I just said.
Okay.
So here's the schedule going forward. The election day is November 3rd. If voter approval, there'll be an ordinance finally adopting the franchise. The franchise goes into effect January 1st, 2021, if approved by the voters and by the Public Utilities Commission. That is the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Tom. We do have opportunities to ask Tom Carr more questions. Right now, Tom, I think you just hit it on your last slide, but there is one clarifying question. Is there anything that could delay it with the regulatory commissions at the state level, even if we approve and there's any hurdles to continue to be there? Question's a little long, but
that's fine. The answer is yes. It requires PUC approval. From my experience in the PUC, I would expect that approval would be likely. I'm not familiar with very many franchises that have been rejected, particularly one where the PUC encouraged us, but yes, it will require PUC approval.
Okay.
And it would be challenging if the PUC doesn't approve, then we'd probably have to go back to the voters.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Next is Alice Jackson. She is the president of Xcel Colorado, and we wanted to give Alice the opportunity to provide Xcel's perspective on the franchise agreement and how we've gotten this far with the company and the city. So Alice, if for a few minutes you want to just provide your perspective and the company's position on all this.
No, absolutely. So thank you first off very much for hosting today. It is great to be able to be in front of all of you and have this conversation. I expect that the meat of the conversation, the most interesting part, are going to be the questions that we get towards the end. So I'll make my comments somewhat brief here, so that you all have plenty of time to ask those questions. But to start with, one of the things I love reflecting back on is the presence of not just Xcel, but Public Service Company of Colorado, and prior to that, other entities. We've been here in the state of Colorado and had the pleasure to serve customers for over 150 years. It makes us the second oldest corporation in the state. And it has been a pleasure to build the community, the relationships, and provide the underpinnings of the economic development of all of those communities for all of these years. And we look forward to doing so for many more, including the relationships that we are reestablishing here in Boulder with the franchise agreement and the potential to move forward into the energy partnership agreement, which is the part that I'm most excited about, that I look forward to talking about here with you all today. I know there have been lots of conversations about what is Xcel, who is Xcel, how have we done things over the past several years. I think it's remarkable to look back on the history of just the past decade. The changes that you've seen not only in the industry as a whole from an electric utility perspective, but specifically at our company. I joined the team here in Colorado a little over just shy of 7 years ago. I was very round at that moment because I joined the team in November and had our first native Coloradan in January of the following year. So it's been a very quick number of years here. But back at that point in time, I came in at what I hear now and what I've learned in the discussions through these negotiations was a fairly pivotal point at the end of 2013 with a fairly contentious vote. I know the relationships in Boulder have been different for these past 10 years, but I do think that we have some great opportunities here to form and forge not only a great partnership, but something that we can show the rest of the state and the rest of the country on how you can get these things done on driving carbon out of our system, continuing to embrace the environmental changes, the technological advancements that are possible, and the things that we can get done. For over 10 years, Xcel has been one of the #1 leaders in renewable energy across the country, and no more so than here in Colorado. by adding the wind that we've had to on the system, and which was pushed by that really important ballot initiative back in 2004 by the citizens of the state of Colorado. We doubled down and invested in technology and development to figure out how do you integrate it. Yes, back then our engineers were saying, we don't think we can do a whole lot of this, but look at where we are today. Just last week, we were able to bring online and bring into service our Cheyenne Ridge 500 megawatt wind farm early and under budget. That particular project will add another substantial portion of renewables to our system in order to make things move forward and also bring costs down on electricity prices for our customers. And that really is where the focus is. Back in 2016, when I was part of this team, we were able to go before the commission and put out a revolutionary path forward for the company and our customers across the state, whether that's better information access for the data on how they consume energy, better renewable energy products and services that they can tap into and take advantage of as businesses, collaboration with our communities on what it is that they truly want as the outcome of their system, or the bigger plans of the electric resource plan that came out of the Colorado